Hi, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Feel like it's a very long time no see. Haven't done a live in a long time. So I'm just going to be here for the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, however long you guys can keep me here for. If you hear any weird noises in the background, it's probably my dogs or the cat because it is very stormy outside. So I apologize for that. And we'll wait a couple more minutes. A couple of you have already started asking questions, which is cool. So I will get around to answering those. Hopefully, a few more people can join in the next few minutes. And if not, then you can always catch this on my YouTube. It'll be saved in videos anyway. But yeah, feel free to ask me pretty much anything right now, mainly in terms of North Korea. But obviously, if you're interested in my videos on Tonga and my life in Tonga, I'm still here right now, but hoping to leave next month. It's August here actually already. It's the 1st of August here. I'm ahead of you, most of you, in terms of time. So it's August already, and I hope to leave at the end of this month. So at the end of August, back to the UK. So yeah, if you have any more questions about Tonga, then feel free to ask away about that. If not, ask me about North Korea, my time there, any fun stories I have, any questions that you might have about North Korea tourism, stuff like that. Or also, if you're interested in my running journey, that's another interesting thing that I have to speak about. For those of you who don't know, last week or 2 weeks ago now, I actually did a 100-kilometer run all around this tiny little island that I live on. So if you have any questions on that, let me know. All right, so I'm going to start getting to your questions. For the people who asked me some things before I came here, UD, if you marry a North Korean girl, is it possible to get the North Korean citizenship and live in North Korea? Funnily enough, I get asked this a lot, and pretty much no. It would be, firstly, very, very difficult for you to find a North Korean girl in order to marry. And then, yeah, it's very difficult getting North Korean citizenship. Pretty difficult. If any of you know the story of Joe Dresnok, there's actually a really interesting documentary from Koryo Tours, the company that I work for, called Crossing the Line. And he's one of the very few American citizens who actually defected into North Korea. Very, very interesting story. So would definitely recommend giving that documentary a look. I could try and find it right now, actually, because it is currently available. I'm going to put it in the link after, but it's currently available to download and watch online, stuff like that. So yeah, have a look at it. I'll put it in the comments on this video after I've finished. But if you're interested in finding out how someone defected into North Korea, it's a very interesting video. But in terms of marrying North Korean women, you can forget about that. And how would it be possible to get money to the DPRK? Very, very difficult, and it's probably against sanctions and stuff like that. So cannot help you on that. Pam, hi Pam. Adam, question 1. Okay, can you book the Potonggang hotel if you go on an independent tour? Yeah, you can. It's a very popular hotel. As long as it is free, like has availability, then you can book it. It's a little bit more expensive. That's why it's not the default hotel on most tour itineraries. Like sometimes it is, but usually it's not the default hotel on most tour itineraries because it's more expensive. It's pretty much the most expensive. In our terms, that's pretty much, I think, only like 20 or 30 euros extra per night. But please don't quote me on that because actually I don't know. But it's not actually that much extra per night than you otherwise would be paying. But yeah, as long as it has availability and as long as you're happy to pay a little bit extra for your independent tour, then yeah, you can stay in the Potonggang Hotel. For those who don't know, you can have a look at the video that I made on the Potonggang Hotel. It's the most expensive hotel in North Korea. It's pretty, like, it hasn't been refurbished in a long time. Well, the rooms at least. So it's pretty like old school, but it's also very fancy and grand and stuff like that. It's really nice. And it's one of the few hotels that has Wi-Fi in it as well. You have to pay for that though, not free Wi-Fi. Pepic121. It's not possible to live in North Korea unless you're. Yes, that's very true. Generally, so you mentioned it's not possible to live in North Korea unless you're a diplomat or some humanitarian person. Generally, yeah. Those are the kind of people that live in North Korea. So yeah. Kirkland Day. Hey Zoe, do you know anything about the requirements of teaching English in the DPRK? So very interesting question, because actually I personally don't know much about the requirements of teaching English in the DPRK, but I do know that some years ago, the British Council had a program, because the British Council sometimes has programs sending people abroad and stuff, and they actually had a program sending people to the DPRK, sending people to North Korea. And then that stopped. So there were teachers going there, or there have been a couple of teachers going there, but in general, it's pretty difficult too. I think you need to be a pretty good teacher. Like, you need to have pretty high qualifications and had a lot of experience and stuff like that. And yeah, in general, it's pretty difficult. And I don't know much about it, to be honest. Unfortunately. Yeah. So, Pam, why the UK? It's a very so. I'm going to go back to the UK at the end of this month, at the end of August, and the reason I'm going back there is pretty much. Well, I suppose the answer to this question is the reason why I haven't yet gone back as well. So I'm going back to the UK basically because that is the only way that the only place that I'm literally allowed to go to right now. So I'm in Tonga, which is a very, very remote island in the middle of the South Pacific, and there are flights once a week to New Zealand. And the only way that I am allowed to transit through New Zealand is if I'm returning back to my home country. So I'm not allowed to transit through New Zealand just to, go on a holiday, have some fun somewhere else. So in order to transit through New Zealand, I have to go back to the UK. And in order to get out of here, I have to transit through New Zealand. So pretty much it's the only way that I'll get out of this country. And also, for those who don't know much about me or my background, so usually before COVID times, I used to live in China and work in North Korea. So I'd pretty much on average go to North Korea once a month. The rest of the time I'd be in China. And I've been stuck in Tonga since March 2020 because of border closures, stuff like that, lack of availability of flights. Basically came here on holiday and then didn't end up being able to leave, especially because China, where I usually live, that closed in March as well to foreigners, and has pretty much stayed with its doors very sealed shut. I know a few foreigners have been able to get back in, but it's pretty difficult. So unfortunately, I have pretty much, for the next few months, given up on going back to China. Originally, I was still here, still kind of waiting to see if the borders would potentially open or, if something would change. But I've now very much come to terms with the fact that China is staying very closed for at least a few more months. To me, and more importantly, the country that I work in, and indeed the reason China has remained closed since January 2020, and that definitely doesn't, unfortunately, look like it's going to be opening up anytime soon either. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to head back to the UK. Here I've been doing my master's actually at university online, and my plan is to go back to the UK and do another master's as a bit of a keeping me busy if I don't find something else to keep me busy. Until then, let's see. So Pam also asked, is DPRK going to reopen? And I think that kind of answered your question a little bit. Hopefully, I'd really like it to reopen. Hopefully, it's going to reopen. Well, it will reopen at some point, but I don't know when that's going to be. I would say definitely not going to be this year, but a lot of crazy things have been happening, so maybe. But I would really say it's probably not going to open anytime this year. It might open next year. We can hope for next year, and then everyone can start traveling there again. So Rasif, first question, have you ever sought North Korean healthcare? Do you know any foreigner who needed medical attention in the country? If so, what is it like? Yeah, interesting question. I do know a few people who have had to seek medical attention in North Korea whilst I've been on tour. It is, so firstly, when foreigners are there, you're going to generally have pretty different medical care to normal North Koreans. And that's just because, like, getting way more expensive, like private healthcare, whereas the North Koreans, they get healthcare for free. It's all part of the state and stuff like that. So you shouldn't, what I'm going to say and talk about the healthcare is not how, you should think that it is for the North Koreans as well. But basically, you wouldn't really want to get ill in North Korea, but also it's not the worst country to get ill in. The healthcare that I've seen has been actually really, really good. They have some foreign doctors, yeah, it's been actually really, really good. They're very speedy. You get seen very quickly to a doctor. If you're ill, usually the doctor will come to your hotel, even to your hotel room, and check on you. And if you need to go to hospital or the doctor, you'll get taken there straight away. It's really, really good in general. I'll just say one really funny thing. There's actually one time I got ill as well. I'll tell you about that. But one really funny thing that I find so interesting about Asian medical care a lot of the time. So when I say Asian, I'm talking about Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. And this goes for North Korea as well. I find it so interesting that they will automatically, generally, their go-to is to put you onto a drip, like an IV drip. And for anyone in like the UK or anyone in the Western world, I don't know what it's like for other countries actually, but definitely in the UK, if you are put on a drip, it's like the end of the world. It's like, oh my gosh, you went on a drip? Like, are you okay? On the IV drip, it's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like something serious has happened. If you get put on a drip, then something serious has happened and gone wrong. But in Asia, it's like the go-to. So it's always have to explain this little cultural difference because, for example, if someone is ill, maybe they have a cold or a fever, and they have to spend the day at the hotel, then I always have to explain to them, like, don't worry, if the doctor comes and puts you on a drip, it's fine, you're not dying, like it's just their kind of go-to. It's a quick heal. So yeah, because for Europeans, I think at least it's quite intimidating when you get put on a drip. For me, the first and only ever time that I'd been put on a drip, once in China, and then once in North Korea when I got food poisoning, and they put me on a drip. And it's actually, I think, really nice because they just it's a quick fix. It's like lots of nice and fluids to your body. But yeah, I got food poisoning. It was really, really sad. So for anyone who has seen my skiing in North Korea video, it's a pretty cool video. It was a pretty fun time. But the video would have been so much better if I'd have had more time to film because I spent the first 2 days with really bad food poisoning. And it's the only time I've ever had food poisoning, I think, in Asia. Never had it in China, never usually in North Korea, never in Korea or Japan or anything like that. It was, I got it when I was going to the ski resort and just spent the first day and night. And then the first half of the second day, just completely out of it. But yeah, so medical attention for foreigners, at least, you don't have to worry about it. You'll always be seen to, and you'll be sent back if in the case of an emergency. And obviously for your tour, if you're on a group tour, you will have to spend, the day at the hotel or something like that if you need to chill out, and that's a bit of a shame. But yeah, that's it. Lord Omar Master. I'm new to this channel. What work do you exactly have relation with North Korea? So hi, Omar. Thanks for joining. For those who are also new and don't really know much about me, I usually work in North Korea tourism. So I take foreigners from China, or like I take foreigners who, first come to China and then take them from China into North Korea. So mainly a lot of Europeans, a lot of Australians, a lot of New Zealanders, a lot of people from all over the world, to be honest. And I take them on a tour throughout North Korea. Tronald Dumb, hello. What do the authorities and the DPRK think of your YouTube content? Well, the only feedback that I have ever had from my YouTube content stuff has been from the guides who often appear in my videos, and they've never actually seen a lot of the videos, but they've seen they've seen a couple of videos, especially the ones that they feature in. And I show them, of course, because they feature in a lot of them. And I think it's only polite that I show them what I kind of make out of them. And they are they're not the authorities, but they are a feed through the authorities. So if they're not happy, or if they tell me, oh, hey, maybe you should not do this, maybe you should not do that, then I would know, oh, okay, as someone from up there said something to you. But actually, unfortunately, I started this YouTube channel pretty much just before the borders closed. So I haven't been able to make many vlogs. So I don't know what they think of the channel right now. I presume it's okay. No one said anything to me. And before the borders closed, actually the guides really liked it. And I think I had generally good feedback. So all good. All right. Hi, Dad. Shout out to my dad who's here. That's Simon Stevens in there. Thanks for joining. Pam, do you want to get vaccinated? I've actually been double jabbed. AstraZeneca over here. Adam, if you buy a North Korean phone, can you call domestic people? So can you call the guides? Do you have to buy the Koryo SIM card? Very good question, and I'll try and answer it pretty quickly. So basically, no. If you buy a North Korean phone, they're not if you buy a North Korean phone, you could technically call domestic, local North Korean people. However, you can't, because you can't get the local domestic SIM card. When you're a foreigner in North Korea, you can only get basically the foreigner Air Koryo SIM card, which allows you to get onto the internet. It allows you to call other foreign phones in North Korea, but you can't call domestic phones. The North Korean phone is basically entirely useless to you, because you can't use it in North Korea on the foreign SIM cards, and you also can't use it outside of North Korea, because the North Korean phones, I don't know technology, I don't know how it works, but for some reason it works on different radio waves. I don't know, someone told me. Anyway, you can't use a North Korean phone either in or out of North Korea as a foreigner. So entirely pointless purchase. However, they are pretty cool. I don't know what they recently, but before I went, they had some pretty Apple iPhone-y kind of phone lookalikes, and also they have the Arirang and the Pyongyang make. And it's funny, it's like Android and Apple. People who have Arirang are really yeah, Arirang is the best. And then people who have the Pyongyang phone, everyone's like, oh yeah, no, this one's the best though. This one lasts longer. So it's quite funny that is kind of started up. And one of them definitely looks more Huawei-ish, and one of them definitely looks more iPhone-ish. So, Kirkland Day, what were your first impressions of the DPRK? I have a one-liner for this that I always say, and it still rings true to me now, is that it's pleasantly underwhelming. The DPRK is pleasantly underwhelming and pretty normal. That was genuinely my first impression of the UK. It's just pretty normal. And obviously, it's a very, very different country to what we're all used to. It works entirely differently. It's nothing like anyone knows now. But there are a lots of similarities. For example, there are still people there who walk around trying to live their daily lives. You know, it's not this crazy place that the media would have you believe. It's not super, yeah, it's not super like crazy. There aren't military parades all the time. There aren't rockets and stuff like that. It's really underwhelming because you expect to see all of this stuff when you first go. If your only impression of North Korea is the media, then you expect it to be mental when you get there. And when it's actually really normal, it's a bit weird. You're like, oh, is this it? But then also it's kind of nice that that's it because it's kind of normal. That's a good question. Anil, speaking of food, is the food very different between the DPRK and South Korea? It's not super different. It's all Korean food, but there are a few differences. One main difference, I think, especially in some of the restaurants that are popular with foreigners, is that there's a big Chinese influence in North Korean food. Just like China influences a lot of North Korea, including the language and stuff, China's definitely influenced North Korean food, unlike in the South. Generally, Korean food is Korean food, whether North or South, but there's definitely more of a Chinese influence in some of the flavors and also some of the dishes that they give to foreigners. And this mainly because the main foreigners that go to North Korea are Chinese people, and Chinese people like to eat Chinese food. So they cater for that. And that's pretty much it. But in general, yeah, it's all Korean food. There is one Korean food that's my favorite food. I think I've said this before, called imjobap. It's actually completely vegan. And you can only find it in North Korea. They don't have it in South Korea. It actually came about because of the famine in the 90s as a meat substitute. And it's basically this spicy rice in tofu skin, kind of. And I'm really not selling it by the sound of it, but it's really, really good. Really good. Zach Boff, so asking if Simon Stevens, aka my dad, has been to the DPRK, and like he's just put in the comments. Unfortunately, yeah, we had a whole cheeky little holiday in April 2020 planned. He was going to come to North Korea, and we were going to have a lot of fun. But then obviously COVID happened, so yeah, maybe this time next year. Let's see. Let's see. So Kirkland Day, do you know what the phones are like for citizens? No worries. Feel free to keep asking the questions. I'm gonna keep answering them until they're all gone. But yeah, feel free to keep asking questions, guys. So what the phones are like for the citizens? I think I answered that question before, actually. The phones, they're smartphones, right? But I started working in Korea about 3 or 4 years ago now. And I think when I first got there, some of the guides had smartphones, some of them had like old Nokia style phones and stuff like that. And you'd see people on the street walking around with a mixture. Now it's very common, at least certainly in Pyongyang, it's very common for a lot of people to have a smartphone. It's a pretty normal thing to have a smartphone. People are even buying like whilst they still have a smartphone, they'll be buying the new one and selling their old one on and stuff like that. I remember one of the reasons why Arirang is better than Pyongyang make or something like that is because, or it could be the other way around, but one of them is better to sell secondhand because it lasts longer and stuff like that. So it's funny, but people are selling their secondhand phones and buying the new upgraded smartphones just like we do. Their smartphones are really similar to ours. Like they just have a lot of knockoff stuff on them, like the apps and stuff like that we do. So, they have a Candy Crush that's not Candy Crush, but it's Candy Crush. They even have online takeout stores and stuff. That was in process of being like finished when I was last there. So I don't know what that's like now. But yeah, their phones are, you'd look at it and you wouldn't think, oh, this is a North Korean phone. You'd look at it and be like, that's a smartphone. All right. Okay, good question, Mikus B80. Any restrictions visiting other countries after going to the DPRK? Yes, something that you should think about, really. And that's the main thing that you have to think about is the US. And so basically, when you go into North Korea, you won't get a stamp in your passport. So that's something to think about. But you will have gone. So there's only one place in North Korea that you go to that you get a stamp in your passport. That's a place called Rason in the Northeast. But otherwise, yeah, you want to watch out. If you go to the US a lot, then you do want to consider your holiday in the DPRK, because if you have been to the US, if you have been to North Korea, then you'll know, and if you're eligible for the transit visa, which is not the US visa. So if you want to like transit through the US, a lot of countries don't need to get like the full US visa. You can get the partial US visa, the transit one, but you're not allowed to get this if you have been to the DPRK. You're not allowed to get this if you've been to certain countries. So that's something to bear in mind. And yeah, if you go there a good few times, the US might not even grant you a visa in general. The people. So Lando or Yanto, I don't know if that's an L or an I, but I'm hoping that your question is like sarcastic, but if it's not, then I apologize and I will very much I'll reply to it. But this is probably like you've put all of my 3 favorite questions in question. So the question is, the people I've seen on the subway in Pyongyang, where are they going? What are they thinking? Are they all actors? I think I've probably talked about this in a different video, which is why I say, like, I don't know if you're being serious or not, because this is honestly something that I get asked all the time in Pyongyang. We'll be on the subway and people will be like, wow, it's really busy. Where are they all going? What are they doing? Are they all actors? Honestly, I get that question a lot. And I'll just ask them, like, when you sit on the subway in New York, or when you're on the metro, when you're on the underground in the UK, do you ask these questions? Like, do you wonder where everyone's going? Do you wonder what everyone's doing? Of course, it's interesting to know, and I understand why we have these thoughts and prejudices of the DPRK, and we're like, oh my gosh, real people, what are they doing? But in all honesty, I have no idea where people are going when they ride the subway. I have no idea what they're doing. And the reason that I have no idea is because they're not paid actors. They're real people and they're just doing their lives. And I would say in the morning, early, they're probably going to work. If you ride in the subway at around 8:30, 7:30, they're probably on the way to work. If you ride in the subway around 4:35, they're probably on their way home. If they're riding it throughout the day, then it could be any number of things. Maybe they have a day off, they're going to see a friend, maybe they're going on their way to a volleyball game. Maybe there's just, what do you do when you ride the subway? But what I can tell you 100% is that they're not actors. And I have numerous reasons for that. But if you want me to explain more on why I know they're not actors, please do ask me in the questions, because that's a whole other video, and I won't go on about it unless you're all really interested. Zach Buff, cool question. Is it possible to establish a pen pal with a DPRK university student? No, not that I've ever heard of, but that would be really cool. Yeah, maybe I'll maybe that's something to look into. Maybe kind of establish something to do something like that. Yeah. Okay, North Koreans get food for free. Could you tell us more about that? So basically, in their system, they have a certain, like, they call it rations, but it's not rations as we know it, as like wartime rations. They basically are entitled to a certain food amount every week. For the men, this includes beer as well. I can't remember how many liters it is, but they're entitled to a certain amount of beer every week or every month. Basically, how they get these food entitlements is in their apartment area, their apartment complex, or at some of the supermarkets nearby, they have these stations, and it has things like rice, oil, stuff like that, all your staples, and they'll bring their ticket there, and then they'll pick up their food. It's basically how it works. So that's either at the bottom of their apartment block or around their area, or also in the local supermarket. So Rasif Kandoka, how do North Koreans express their individuality? Is North Korea a place where people are static in terms of self-expression, or is there a push for things like fashion, various subcultures, aesthetics, etc.? Very interesting question. Like it. Yeah, I think in any group, people are always going to strive to express their individuality. And fashion is certainly one of the ways that they're doing it. In Pyongyang, it's pretty tricky. So Pyongyang is very highly looked at, and so I think it's harder for people to express themselves individually, especially in Pyongyang. However, you can see a lot of fashion changes, especially in the countryside. One thing, I think I've talked about it one time on on one of my videos or something, or in a blog or something, but I had a really nice experience one time. I'll go over this super quickly. Where I was in the countryside with two ladies from Pyongyang, and we were in a very, very remote location right in the northeast. And they had bought these quite loud patterned leggings, and they started putting them on in the homestay that I was staying in. I was actually in a homestay in the very northeast of North Korea. And they started putting these leggings on, and they were like, oh my gosh, so comfy. And then we were gonna go to the volleyball area. There's a volleyball area near the homestay. And we were gonna go there, and they wanted to change their pants and change their trousers, because they shouldn't be like going outside in this. As Pyongyang ladies, they should be dressed very proper, very nicely. So I was like, it's fine, come on, just come out. And they were like, oh yeah, okay, it's the countryside, maybe we can, go out dressed like this. And they had like big flowers on their trousers and stuff like that. Anyway, they were super nervous to go out dressed like that, but they enjoyed it. And I don't think that they'll be doing it in Pyongyang, but basically this story, there's a lot more freedom in the countryside, and also in the border towns, especially because there's a lot of influence from China, and Chinese fashion is quite, random and here, there, and everywhere. So there's a lot of room for self-expression and individuality there, I think, whereas Pyongyang is much more monitored, and it is the model city, so citizens should look nice. So individuality and stuff is a bit more, yeah, they can't really express it so much there. But for sure, even in things like their own homes, they'll decorate it differently. Yeah, there'll be fashion is a really big one, an important one, and things like how they're doing their hair, how they're doing the makeup, stuff like that, especially for ladies. For men, honestly, not so sure. So Gary Clark asks me, hi Zoe, do you have a North Korean phone? No, I don't. I've genuinely considered buying one, especially when the new cooler smartphones came out. But as I've said previously in this video, if you weren't here at the start, have a look back. But to have a North Korean phone, they're expensive. They're really expensive. The same price for North Koreans as for us. They're the same price as an iPhone or an Android. Like about like a good few £100, if not like 1,000 or more. They're really expensive, and they have entirely no use to me. It would just be a piece of cool electronicness that I could be like, oh, this is a North Korean phone. So I'm not going to do that. James, we should try and set a world record for the number of Stevenses in the DPRK at one time. I agree. Let's see how many we can get there. So Adam, can you stay at different hotels in North Korea on your trip in different cities? Yes, yeah, you can. I've stayed in about 20 or 30 different hotels, maybe even more. There are hundreds, maybe hundreds of hotels throughout the DPRK, and you can stay in a variety of them. Most of them are open for tourists. The only thing that is stopping you really is that, one, you don't want to be moving every single night to a different hotel. And two, some of them get booked up. And three, if you're in a group tour, then it's generally better to stay a few nights in the same hotel. Otherwise, you're just going to get tired. And also, it's easier to organize for us as well, just staying in one hotel, unless you're moving throughout different cities. So you can stay at different hotels in different cities. For example, in Pyongyang as well, I have stayed in probably, I'm going to say 8 or 9 different hotels in Pyongyang. I do have a couple of my favorites, maybe more, maybe less. Anil asked me, have I gone on the subway? Yes. I've been on the subway many times, and I can tell you they're not all actors. Isha wants me to speak in a little bit of Dutch. I haven't spoken Dutch in a long time. I'm not gonna attempt it. Yeah, Dutch I haven't spoken in about 3 or 4 years. Although I do have Dutch neighbors right now. I can write it better than I can speak it. Always, do you get a government minder, or are you allowed to roam around on your own? So you, as a tourist, you always have a North Korean with you. Always. And there's usually 2 of them. The difference is they're not government minders. They are people who, they're guides, they're tour guides. So like me, I'm a tour guide. They're also a tour guide, and they are highly trained tour guides. They go to tourism college, and then they train in their company for a few years before they're actually fully fledged tour guides. So they're very professional, and not government minders. Actually, they're there to stop you from getting into trouble for the other people who are watching you, right? But yeah, you always have to be with the North Korean guides, unless that's whilst you're there as a tourist. But there are people that live and work there. Probably not right now. There are less and less foreigners there right now during the COVID times. But there are people that live and work there, diplomats, NGO workers, and they are allowed to walk around. They have a permit. When you're on a tourist visa, you have to have a North Korean with you. If you live there or you're there for a long time, you have a special permit, and then you can walk around and go to a lot of places by yourself. No problem. Kirkland Day. Yep, men in the DPRK are given free beer. It's very true. Yep. There are bars where you can, it's purely for giving in your beer tokens and stuff like that. Have I ever seen homeless people or slums in the DPRK? No, you definitely wouldn't see that kind of thing in the DPRK. And also in China as well, it's very strict kind of out of sight, out of mind there, unfortunately. Pepic121, you always have a minder with you. They only want to take you and only see what they allow you to see. So people say this a lot. And I know it's not a question. I'm just going to make a comment on it. Yes, people, you'll always have guides with you. And yes, they only take you to the nice places, because if you think about it, you're going on a tour to their country, and they're taking you on a tour. So when you go on a tour to Spain, when you go on a tour to, I don't know, anywhere in the world, and if you have a tour guide, they're going to take you to the nice places. They're not going to take you to the nasty places because that's what they want you to have. They want you to have a good impression of their country, and especially so in East Asian culture, especially so in like Japanese and Korean culture. You are a guest in their country, and they want you to have the best time as possible. So of course, they're only going to show you the good things. You're only going to see all of those good places. But I'll always say, they will show you what they want to show you, but you can see a lot more if you just kind of use your eyes. You know, they can take you to a museum, but you can see much more by chatting to the staff that work at the museum. You can see much more by, on the way to the museum, just observing the streets and stuff like that. You can really see a lot more than you might think. Zagboff, do you do any political work related to the DPRK, like trying to end travel ban and sanctions? No, actually, I stay away from politics completely, and anything like that, just because I think tourism and politics and stuff, at least I try and separate them, because especially with the DPRK, it can get very complicated. Who is the wealthiest North Korean you know? Have you met anyone who has amassed considerable wealth in the so-called underground free market? Very interesting and difficult question. And in all honesty, I know no one like that in the DPRK, because the main people that I know are tour guides or people who work in hospitality and who work in the hotels, stuff like that. But I have met some very interesting people coming in and out on the train, from North Korea to China or China to North Korea. I've met some very interesting businessmen, and there is a lot of underground stuff that goes on, but I don't know who the richest one is, and I don't know how much wealth they may or may not have been able to amass. So, Roland Mo, what do people think in North Korea about the rest of the world? Again, a very good question. And I think from the North Koreans that I've spoken to, they're mainly really curious, but also not as naive as you might think. So they, if they meet you and they've never met someone from your country before, or they've only met one person from your country before, of course they'll want to know all about it, all about the country. How they're also a lot of the times really interested in how the politics works in your country. They'll want to know. Just generally all about it, but also you shouldn't presume that they know nothing. Actually, North Koreans, they get a lot of information, whether it's from their own education or whether it's from outside the DPRK. Information is money there, and it is rife. It goes around a lot. So they're really not as naive as you might think that they are. It came up in a podcast that I was listening to the other day, and it made me laugh. About someone who was speaking. She's the wife of a diplomat who used to live in who used to live in Pyongyang, and she was saying how the staff at one of the coffee shops would get really annoyed at the foreigners. All the foreigners would go up to them and be like, "Oh my God, do you know the internet? Oh, this is Facebook. Do you know Facebook?" And she was so sick of hearing about Facebook. For some reason, all foreigners just wanted to tell her about Facebook, and she was like, "Yeah, I know about it." And it reminds me, because I've had experiences like that before, where I've seen like foreigners on the bus and stuff be like, "Oh, by the way, yeah, this is how we communicate. We use Facebook. This is how we live, blah, blah, blah." And the guides are like, "Yeah, I know that. I don't really care." It's really funny. So in all honesty, they're not as naive as you might think that they are. A lot of the time, they're interested to find out about stuff, but then they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, let's move on to the next thing." High five from the Netherlands. High five right back at you. Thank you, Isha. Low middle. Okay. Hi, Zoe. The ladies in North Korea always look very chic and they look after themselves. Do they have any sort of exercise regime or any sort of beauty secrets? Very interesting question. And I just spoke about ladies' fashion a little bit near the start. So if you want to go back and listen to that, then feel free. But yeah, they do always look very chic. And that is a lot of the reason, again, because in Pyongyang, they're model citizens and they should look chic. They're always wearing, skirts and high heels and stuff like that. It's pretty much like, I don't know what I'd imagine the 1960s to look like for women. They all have to be dressed very nicely and proper. In terms of exercise regimes or beauty secrets, I don't think that they have any specific things that they do differently. They just generally spend a lot of time on their appearance, a lot of time getting ready. It's something really key to them and something they take pride in their appearance. They really do take a lot of pride in their appearance. So spend a lot of time on it. However, gyms are starting to become much more popular in Pyongyang. And I've heard a couple of them do running and stuff like that. So yeah, that's starting to be a thing. It would be interesting to see when the exercise thing really and gym thing really catches on in North Korea. Vinny, have you used the intranet in the DPRK? If so, how fast is it? I have used the intranet in the DPRK, but the problem is it's entirely in Korean, and I really don't speak much Korean. Certainly not enough to browse the internet, but it seemed pretty fast. I've been on it when I was in the library in central Pyongyang. There are computers where you can access it. But in all honesty, I have no use of it. When I'm in North Korea, I use a SIM card, which has internet. And with that, I, surf the internet, do social media, stuff like that. So their intranet, I wouldn't say it's super fast, but it seemed pretty fast with whatever buttons I was pressing and trying to do stuff. Warsaw Pact, when you say company, what do you mean? Can you let me know what that's in relation to? Was that in relation to the guides? Just let me know and I'll answer. Lord Omar Master, how is LGBT community in North Korea? Non-existent. Yeah, unfortunately, North Korea is a little bit behind on things like that. So the word, I think the word gay and lesbian has only just kind of recently really come into their culture and into their understanding, because even in the last few years, I've seen quite a change in the accepting of the existence of gay people. So for example, when I first started working in the UK, I'd noticed a lot more the guides being like, oh, there's the line that everyone will say actually is that there are no gay people in North Korea. That's just the line. However, obviously it's not correct, and it's just simply that is naive and a lack of understanding of what it is. I think a lot of people who are gay, LGBT, whatever, I think that they might understand, they might know a bit of the bigger picture, they might understand, or they also just might get caught up in society and get caught up in the whole, oh, you have to get married, you have to do this, this, and this. And unfortunately, they might not understand why they're not happy, why something's a bit off and stuff like that. And, they just go through their lives like that. And it's pretty sad, actually. I've met a good few people, and it is just completely naivety. They will say in such a nice way, they will say like, oh yeah, we're fine with gay people, but we don't have any gay people here. And they don't mean to cause any offense like that, but that's their line. Unfortunately, there's no rights, or it's not recognized at all. Gary Clark, do you have a way to keep in touch with North Korean guides during COVID? Unfortunately, no, I really miss them. So obviously as a company, we have a way of keeping in touch with the North Korean travel company that we work with, and therefore the guides, but that's totally like business related. I can't just pick up the phone and call them and be like, hey, how's it going? I've got a couple of people live in China, so I've been able to keep in touch with them, but I can't keep in touch with them at all, which is pretty sad. UD, do you know the income of people? Is there a big difference between a street sweeper and a chief of a nationally owned enterprise? A really good question and really difficult to answer, because I ask the guides anything, and I'm quite close to some of the guides. So some of the guides, I get to know a lot of things, and I get to know a lot about their life. I always, always, always get the sense that salary is something that they really, really don't like to talk about. When you first meet them, or when someone asks them, they will never say it. They'll breeze off the question somehow. They'll never say it. And since becoming closer to them, in all honesty, like I really get the feeling that they don't want to. It's something super private, something they don't want to talk about. So I don't ask them, but it's pretty low, I think, really low. And I think most of the money that goes around the country, I presume their salaries are pretty low, but I've never been able to get it out of them. And also, I don't want to push them to tell me, so I respect that. They want to keep that private. But in terms of the big difference. How North Korea works is that there shouldn't be any, what's it called? There shouldn't be any, I've forgotten the word, but you know what I mean, lower and higher people, technically. But obviously, that's not how it really works. And I think, for example, your example of a street sweeper and chief of a nationally owned enterprise, the chief of a nationally owned enterprise will probably earn most of his money through people giving him money under the hand, and making business work. However, the street sweeper does not have that. So whilst they may have a pretty similar baseline salary, that enterprise owner is going to be a lot better off. Gary Clark, I have a question about Tonga. How much island hopping have you done, and are you able to pick your favorite place? Lots, and yes. So only got 10 minutes left because I'm not going to do over an hour on this. But yeah, I'll speak quickly about Tonga if you're interested. I've done quite a bit of island hopping here, but also hardly any, mainly because it's crazy expensive. Really, really expensive. It's more expensive to get a flight to the outer islands here than it is to get a flight to New Zealand. And I know which one I'd rather do. So I'd really actually love to do a lot more traveling here, but it's just not been possible because it's crazy, crazy expensive. And it's such a shame because I'm sure the outer islands have so much to offer. But I have been to 3 different island groups. Well, I've been to Tonga Tapu. This is the island group that I live on. Tonga Tapu is also the island that I live on, and it is home to my favorite island. I'll speak about that in a minute. The second island group I've been to is called Hapai. It's a little bit north of here. It's about it's about a 14-hour ship away. I've got a video on it, or about an hour or 2 flight away. And then, actually just an hour flight away, I think. And then even further north is the Vavau Island group, and that is about an hour or 2 flight away and over a 24-hour boat away. So actually I got the flight to and from Vavau because they did a student discount one time, and I got the ship to and from Hapai. I don't think I could do 24 hours on that ship. Have a look at the video if you want to see what I'm talking about. I'm pretty tolerant, a lot of things, but probably not that ship for 24 hours. One island group I really want to go to is called the Niues, and it's in the very, 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 very north of Tonga. Very, very far away, closer to Samoa than it is to this island right now. I would love to go there. Very remote. Not many people get to go there, but very expensive. So no, thank you. And my favorite, which I said I would say, is Eua, and that is a very convenient 2-hour boat journey away from Tonga Tapu, the island that I'm on. And it's also part of the Tonga Tapu island group that I live on. It's amazing. It's like this million-year-old island, and it's the thing that I love about it the most is Tonga Tapu is flat, like really, really flat. But Eua is really, really high up. You can see for miles out. You can see Eua from here, actually, and vice versa. It was just amazing. Lots of wild horses, lots of tropical rainforesty kind of hiking and stuff like that. Very cool. Have a look at the video if you want to see more in Eua. Is there any gaming culture in North Korea? Like, such an interesting question. Yeah and no. Mainly no, but there are not in the way that we know it. I think a lot of boys or girls don't sit in their rooms alone and play games. However, they will go out and play arcade games. There are lots of parks and stuff that have arcade games, shooting games, throw ring games, stuff like that in parks and in the streets. And if there's ever like festivities on and stuff like that, you'll see lots of people doing that. There's also a fun fair, stuff like that. So not gaming culture, but there is some kind of gaming culture. Roland Mo, what do North Korean people do in their spare time during holidays? It's so difficult to say because that's like saying, what do British people do in their spare time? What do British people do in their holidays? It's so different. One thing that I will say is that generally whether you're in Korea, Japan, China, generally what people all love to do on their free time, on their days off from work, they will always say sleep, which makes me laugh. So that's the first answer that you'll probably get from the North Koreans. But otherwise, you see them a lot on national holidays. They usually go to the park. National holidays are this best time to be there, in my opinion, because everyone's out having fun. They go to the park and they're dancing, singing, drinking, having picnics. They get together big groups of family and friends and have some fun together. And otherwise, they love to play sport. They play lots of sports, volleyball. You'll see, like most companies have their own like volleyball team and stuff like that, and they love to get together and play off with each other. So they really like volleyball and stuff like that. And otherwise, shopping. I think a lot of the ladies have said that they love shopping. Can't really think of anything else that's specific to North Korea, but yeah, just generally, to be honest, the same things that a lot of people like to do. But they would probably spend more time outdoors. I generally get that vibe. And I think I just answered your question, Lou Middle. What is the most popular sport in North Korea? Would say volleyball. Yeah, a lot of people love to play volleyball. Guys and girls, everyone gets together on their lunch breaks and stuff like that at work. I know we work with, they have a 2-hour lunch break and they'll play volleyball. They have this big match every year where the different guides play off each other, the English speaking guides and the Chinese speaking guides. They'll have like a playoff. Very cool. Yeah. Craig Wilson, congrats on the 100-kilometer, by the way. Thank you very much. It was honestly the worst 17 hours of my life. It took me 17 hours to run 100 kilometers, which is the whole island. And it was really bad. It was not fun. I enjoyed the last 5 minutes. It was raining the whole time. Awful. Okay, the last few questions. At what age do people retire, men and women? Good question. I don't know. I can't remember. So I can't really answer that. But yeah, sorry. I don't know. Similar to us, but I can't remember at all. What's the most posh place in so Rasif? What is the most posh place? What's the Beverly Hills of North Korea? Any supercars? Any expensive estates? So apart from all of Kim Jong-un's estates and stuff like that, the most poshest place in North Korea is certainly Pyongyang, especially in the area where all the diplomats live. You definitely won't find any supercars, but you will find some pretty posh cars driving around, some Mercedes. Not like super crazy supercars, but there are some very, very expensive shops around that area, some expensive housing and stuff like that. And Pam, I think this is going to be our last question, but have you visited your friend's house? I presume you mean in North Korea. And no, unfortunately, it's not permitted. It's not permitted in general. Well, it's not permitted for foreigners to house in North Korea, but also you don't usually in North Korea, they don't have the whole culture of visiting each other's houses to hang out. It's generally like it is permitted, but each apartment block and stuff has one person who will watch out for everyone and watch out and like make and check in people and stuff like that. So it's pretty strict. So to go to a friend's house, it's not so convenient. And most of the time people will meet outside, like go for dinner or go to the park or something like that together. So I've never been to a friend's house. It's absolutely not permitted. And in general, they don't have this culture so much of visiting each other's friends' houses as well. Okay, very last question. Aravind Dinesh, do you have any North Korean movie or music suggestions? So I presume that you mean North Korean made movies or North Korean made music. Yes, if you want to listen to the Morangbong band, they're probably they're the big pop stars of North Korea. Have a look on YouTube. And in terms of movies, have a look at in terms of North Korean movies, I'm going to put, because someone mentioned Crossing the Line before, I'm going to put up tons of links of best North Korean movies, North Korean made movies, and also best movies about North Korea. I'm going to put them up in the description so you guys can enjoy that. And I'm going to leave you for now. So thank you very much for joining. Did not expect this to last for so long, but thank you for all of your super awesome questions. And thanks for hanging out with me for an hour. Yeah, feel free to keep asking questions because I'll put this up in my proper YouTube bit later. Feel free to keep asking me questions, and I'll answer them in the comments. Guys, see you later. Bye bye.